Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by introducing the redesigned CatholicSingles.com, featuring new ways that put the spotlight on the person and their faith, not just a profile picture. For the past 20 years, faithful Catholics have used CatholicSingles.com, and the reimagined CatholicSingles.com website is ready to help single Catholics take the next step in sharing meaningful relationships with other faithful Catholics. Remember, CatholicSingles.com for faith, fellowship, and love. Ignatius Press is pleased to announce the first national book club created for Catholic schools. Ignatius Book Club for Catholic Schools was launched to support Catholic schools' dedication to forming the whole child, mind, body, and spirit. Ignatius Book Club for Schools partnered with leading publishers of children's literature to offer the best books and educational materials for all reading levels and interests. Head to ignatiusbookclub.com/podcast and find wholesome books that delight, inspire, and enrich.
Well, hey, everybody. I hope you had an awesome week. Welcome back to Lisa, Hendey, and Friends. This week on the podcast, we're going to take a look at a movie that is newly out, just starting today on video on demand and DVD, The Apparition. And because this is a film in French, normally I would play the trailer for you of a film we'll be discussing, but you won't be able to read the subtitles from where you are, and the trailer is in French. You know, let me just say, if that makes you think right away, I'm not going to watch that one, you'll forget immediately that you're watching a film in French. This movie is so engrossing. And I remember when I saw it in the screener a few months back that I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I'm really happy today to have our guest, Michael O'Neill, better known as the Miracle Hunter, on to talk about the film. But before we jump into that conversation, I'd like to just actually read you a summary of the film so that you have some context for my conversation with Michael. So here's a brief summary of The Apparition. Jacques is a journalist at a large regional newspaper in France. His reputation as an impartial investigator attracts the attention of the Vatican, which recruits him to lead a committee to explore the legitimacy of a saintly apparition in a small French village, a true canonical investigation. Upon his arrival, he meets the young novitiate Anna, who claims to have personally witnessed an apparition of the Virgin Mary. She's garnered an impressive following in the village, but is torn between her faith and the many solicitations she receives. Confronted with opposing views from clergy members and skeptics, Jacques finds his belief system profoundly shaken as he works to uncover the hidden motivations and pressures at work. Again, joining me today on the show is noted guest author and speaker Michael O'Neill, better known as the Miracle Hunter, to discuss the film, The Apparition. Well, next up on the podcast, I'm very honored to have a special guest this week to speak about something that's actually a quite fascinating project that's coming out. Our guest this week is Michael O'Neill. You may know him as the Miracle Hunter. Michael is a graduate of Stanford and a member of the Mariological Society of America, and he's the author of many books, including Exploring the Miraculous, 365 Days with Mary, and 20 Questions, Apparitions, and Revelations. Michael, thanks so much for being our guest today on the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you today.
So I guess I actually didn't even mention probably one of the biggest things, which is that you're the host of The Miracle Hunter, which airs on Relevant Radio and is probably perhaps a good tie-in to why we have you on the show this week to discuss the new movie that's launching on DVD and video on demand this week, The Apparition. But before we dive into the film, I always like to ask my guests to start off with telling us a little bit about your story, which I'm sure in your case is quite fascinating.
Well, I think that I'm maybe the only person in the world doing what I do, so that might make me crazy or that might make me interesting. I'm not sure. But I study miracles, and Marian apparitions is something that I've been tracking over the years. And on my website, miraclehunter.com, I've tracked 2,500 Marian apparitions throughout history. those were the ones that have been claimed, but much fewer have been judged positively by the Catholic Church. And so I do a radio show. I do some TV work for EWTN. I talk about miracles and presentations, do pilgrimages, and write some books. So it's a big mix, but it's all miracles all the time for me.
That's amazing. May I ask, are you a lifelong Catholic? Has faith always been a part of your life?
I was born Catholic, and I've stayed with the faith thanks to some great upbringing from my parents and education. And so it's an evangelization tool for sure to be able to talk about miracles and show how the Catholic Church investigates them. So I feel very blessed to be able to continue this, something that started so long ago as a youngster.
It's a blessing, but also a great responsibility, because I'm sure you get invited. I mean, your bio reads actually very interesting that you've been on the Today Show and Dr. Oz and other secular programs. And I'm sure, that can be a big responsibility, because people sort of who aren't Catholic sometimes look at sort of the kooky side of Catholic. And, they're I've tuned into many a late night radio program where they're discussing the paranormal and tossed in there is some Marian apparition. So that's an interesting field of the new evangelization that you find yourself in.
Yeah, it is a strange thing. I mean, I battled my whole life with this, my whole time working on miracles, to not be lumped in the same loony bin as those people who chase UFOs and Bigfoot. But obviously, there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen for somebody with preconceptions to think of it any differently. So it is a responsibility. I try to bring a skeptical eye and the eye of a believer too. So. It all depends on the day, how I'm going to view a given miraculous event. But, it's a great responsibility to try to present the truth of the way the Catholic Church looks at miracles.
Well, we greatly appreciate your leadership on that, and in that with that perspective, you find yourself now speaking on behalf of this really interesting film project, The Apparition, which will be, as I mentioned, actually as we speak, it's beginning to percolate through DVD and also video on demand. I saw the film a few months back in a screener and was so moved by it. How did you find yourself involved in that particular project and being kind of a spokesperson for this film?
So for better or worse, I've come to be known as an expert on Marian apparitions. And so when they were seeking sort of an English-speaking voice to talk about apparitions, they contacted me, and I loved the film. Actually, I watched it, and I wasn't about to jump on the radio and promote something that I didn't enjoy myself. But one of the things that I like so much is that it is so in tune with the way that the Catholic Church actually investigates the supernatural. Even the depiction of the secret Vatican archives, or the way they go through that 1978 document, which is the current rule book that the Catholic Church uses. The attention to detail is phenomenal, and so. I didn't think it was promoting anything sensational or leading people down the wrong path. So I found it depicted very well how, in fact, these miracle investigations happen.
Yeah, and just to step back for a moment, if you're sort of glazing over, you might have heard the words that the film is actually in French, and I'll say. My French is far from fluent. The film does have subtitles, but you almost forget within the first 5 minutes of the film that you're not watching a film in English, because the story is so intense and so immediately gripping. So what do you think about this film? You've mentioned sort of the truth of the way that the Vatican conducts their canonical investigations, but what do you think about this film will appeal to Catholics in a general sense?
Well, I think it presents the interesting idea of faith. And so when it comes to things like miracles, obviously there are different ways of approaching it. We all know people who are really obsessed with miracles, and maybe a guy who goes by the name Miracle Hunter is one of them. I'm not sure. But there are people who are obsessed with miracles, and that becomes the center of their faith. But that's really not where we're supposed to put at the center of our faith. So I think the movie shows that sort of push and pull, how attractive miracles can be, some of the things that can get people in trouble a little bit when they put that focus there. But as Catholics, we put our faith in Christ, and that's the center of our faith. And miracles can be points of great inspiration for us. But I think the movie really highlights those things that can be pitfalls and dangers when it comes to people who deal with the supernatural. So I think it's a very sensible film, the way that they portray this.
In the film, one of the main characters, I'm trying to be really careful not to do any spoiler alerts, folks, because believe me, there's a big reveal at the end of the film. But the character in the film, Jacques, who's played by Vincent Linden, he's a journalist, and he's sort of the person who's involved in the investigation, but not a person of faith. I was kind of curious to see, was there anything about Jacques becomes so engrossed in this case that he can't let it go. I mean, it really becomes a part of him. Is there anything of you in that character of Jacques that was familiar to you as you were watching the portrayal?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the funny things about the film, and maybe that's why I like it so much, because I felt like they were making a movie about me secretly. But yeah, he's a lot. He definitely doesn't have any faith, and that's what's tricky. Is he comes in as a complete skeptic. I'm definitely a believer and a skeptic together, but I like his attention to detail. He really got to the heart of the matter very quickly, and he was committed to the project early. So I think that he wanted the truth, and I think that's really, when it comes to miracles and things of this nature, you can be a believer, you can be a skeptic, you can be devout or an atheist, but everybody wants the truth, really. And so I think he sort of embodies that for everyone, that character who is on an unending exploration to find out what really did happen, whether it was an authentic apparition of Mary or was it a hoax. And the film does that so well. It balances that when you're watching it, you almost don't know which side to believe until the very end. And even at the end, it's still interesting. So it's an incredible film, and I think that it really will draw viewers in.
I'm curious about one thing that really struck me was his relationship with Anna, who is the young woman who's purported to have viewed the apparition, witnessed the apparition. And there's almost an emotional entanglement that happens there in a very positive way with their relationship. I'm kind of curious for you, when you go about investigating miracles, especially if there's a living witness, how do you maintain your objectivity, and have you ever had something like that happen where you become, very enmeshed personally with the witness?
Well, I've spoken with many people all over the country and the world, and I've spoken with people who have claimed visions of Mary, those bishops who have investigated visions of Mary, people who have the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, and I've interviewed those people as well. So, but you're right; these are all people, and we don't know exactly what's true and what's not, and that's why the investigations need to happen. But it's definitely amazing to hear the stories of these people from their own mouth. We have a lot of dusty old books and websites that relate these incredible stories. You can visit shrines and other places to connect with them, but to speak with somebody who's had a miraculous experience, supposedly, it's definitely a tricky thing to navigate what's true and what's false. And I think the Catholic Church does a very good job of, making sure that people aren't out to make money. They're not looking for fame. They're not just plain crazy. They use psychologists when they look at these things too. So, but it is a fine balance between getting to the bottom of it and interviewing the person and finding out what their experience was.
I'm kind of curious too. So one aspect of this film is that around Anna builds up this sort of circle. While she's a very innocent young woman, around her builds up a circle that includes someone who's almost like a PR person, and you see this sort of furor building up around her, and kind of the mayhem of people flocking to be in this place where they're seeking hope and encouragement, and so they want to be near her. Does that resonate with you in terms of any of the places that you visited where, the visionary or the miracle receiver may be quite innocent, but around them is a group of people maybe who have other motives?
Yeah, I thought that part of the film was so well done because, we have these sort of classic films like Song of Bernadette, which may have won the Golden Globes way back when, or Our Lady of Fatima, some of these very, highest kind of films that it makes it look like everything is just all roses all the time. But when they do have Marian apparitions that are claimed, I think there are lots of people who surround and glom onto the visionary, and you could see the over commercialization. Some people will point that even Lourdes or Medjugorje, the alleged apparition site, is places where it went from a very simple place to a place that's been overblown with commercialization. So it definitely takes a poke at that or makes the point of that. And I think there are great pressures that surround somebody who is claiming a vision of Mary, for example. But any of the even famous cases of Lourdes or Fatima or Guadalupe, in all those cases, there was pressure from the authorities, both church authorities and the civil authorities, to get them to recant their story. So it's really really well done, because it's not this rosy picture that's painted in the movie, but I believe a realistic picture of what does happen when these events are reported.
Absolutely. I had so many sort of mental synapses firing when I was watching the film, and just it's so great to be able to talk to you. Again, our guest is Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter. So, Michael, just to kind of come to a conclusion on this, well, I guess before I do that, I want to ask you my one question, which is, do you have a favorite approved Marian apparition?
So I wish I had a more exotic answer for you, but my favorite Marian apparition is Our Lady of Guadalupe, because as a young girl, my mother prayed to Our Lady of Guadalupe when her mother, who's my grandmother, fell away from the Catholic faith. And people who know me know I don't have a drop of Mexican blood in my body, but for some reason, my mother had a devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and she made a promise that said, if you bring my mother back to the Catholic faith, I will, on every December 12th, tell the world about Our Lady of Guadalupe. So she became a school teacher and told every student every year on December 12th that story. And she said, if you bring my mother back to the faith, I'll tell my own children on December 12th the story of the miracles of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So I wouldn't be telling the story unless it really did happen. So my grandmother reverted back to the faith, and I heard that story each and every year. And so that's a very important story for our family. And that kind of set me off when I started my studies as the Miracle Hunter. I really started with Our Lady of Guadalupe, so she's been a great intercessor for me, and my favorite title of Mary.
And tell us a little bit about the pilgrimages, because I know you lead those. Do you ever take folks down to Guadalupe?
So that will be a future pilgrimage for sure. Right now, we've got a pilgrimage in September of this year. We're going to France. We're doing a Miracles of France pilgrimage. So each year we pick a different place around the world and go to all the miracle spots. So last year we were in Italy for St. Padre Pio's feast day, 50th anniversary, and we went to the House of Loreto and to these other places that are so well known for either Marian apparitions or miracles. And we saw so many great places. It was incredible. But we're going to France in September, and we'll be seeing Lourdes, of course, and Pont-Main and La Salette, and we'll be stopping in Belgium at the very end of the trip for two sites of Vatican-approved Marian apparitions from the 20th century. So we have the old and the new coming together, and we'll be going to see St. Bernadette, who has an incorruptible body, believe it or not. Her body has not decayed over all these years. So we'll be seeing all these incredible sites. People can go to miraclehunter.com, and they can sign up there, or miraclesoffrance.com to sign up. So it should be a great trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that when I was studying before our interview, and I would love to be a guest on that pilgrimage. It looks absolutely amazing. So jumping back to the movie for just a moment, why would you encourage people to dial in and watch The Apparition on DVD or video on demand?
I think people have a lot of misconceptions, either thinking that Marian apparitions are very clear when they happen, like a case of Fatima. Everybody knew it was true, right? But it's not how it goes at all. So I think the movie, The Apparition, presents the reality of how complicated it can get when a visionary starts to claim these visions, and sort of the things that grow up around them, the people who are trying to influence the visionary and to prove them true or prove them false. So I think it's really a real-life way of looking at this incredible phenomenon of miracles in the Catholic Church.
Well, Michael O'Neill, thank you so much for your time, and especially for the important work that you're doing to keep the truth out there and stay safe on the path to hunting those miracles.
Thank you so much. It was great to be with you today.
Again, I invite you to head over to lisahendey.com for show notes that include links to how you can view The Apparition. Also, I'll include over there the trailer for the film. I think after you watch it, you'll want to dive in and watch it yourself. And I'll also have links to Michael's work, Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter, doing so many amazing things to dive in and investigate things that sometimes defy explanation. Miracles. So that's it for this week's show. I'd love your feedback. You can always drop me an email to lisahendey@gmail.com. Head over to iTunes if you would and leave us a star rating or a review. That really helps me to bring a show that will bless you. I'm always continuing to try to learn more about podcasting, so your honest reviews over there really help me quite a lot to make the show better for you each week. And if you have a guest that you'd like to hear on the podcast, I always love your suggestions. Many of our guests are the result of people who say, hey, how about a conversation with XYZ? So again, that's it for this week. I hope you have a terrific week. We're winding down to the end of January. How are your New Year's resolutions going? How has the year been for you so far? How are you amping up to get ready for Lent? And just in general, how's life going? You can, again, send an email or find me at Lisa Hendey on just about any form of social media. That's it for this week's show. Until next week, I hope you have an awesome week, friends, and I'll see you soon. God bless.
Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by Jack Kane Ford. Find your next Ford Tough vehicle at caneford.com. Woodhill Community Center. Have a hand in the heart of the city. Support their mission with your donations at woodhillcommunitycenter.org. Toyota in Nicholasville Superstore. Online consultants are standing by right now to help you find your next Toyota. Visit toyotaonnicholasville.com. Lexus of Lexington, home of the best-selling Lexus IS. Find yours today at lexusoflexington.com.